Hello chicos, hello chicas, how are you going, lovely folks? This is round 3 recap with a twist. Where do chess fans and chess commentators go for a completely meaningless debate? They go to the eval bar. Now, if you don't get the joke here, it is a reflection, or rather a bit of an answer to the ongoing Twitter drama whether commentators should do their commentary with or without the evaluation bar and the engine or not. I'm not going to join that utterly ridiculous debate. Instead, we are going to continue with our recaps. And today, for the first time, I'm going to kick off with one of the ladies' games, in fact, the only decisive one. And I'm super happy to go through this game because I predicted that Vaishali would do well in this tournament, and so I'm very happy to bring one of her games to the table first. So this is, ladies and gentlemen, Vaishali against Salimova. Let's get rolling. e4, e5, knight f3, knight f6, knight takes e5, d6, knight f3, knight e4. We are in the Petrov, and Vaishali plays knight c3, which is particularly awesome because this guy here recommends this in his club level e4 repertoire, and indeed I think that this is a really fun variation to play because it's not particularly theory heavy considered especially to other Petrov lines, and there's a lot of juice in the position because usually white ends up doing exactly what Vaishali did, which was to castle to the opposite side. And now, ladies and gents, it is game on. Let's get that attack rolling against the enemy king. Knight f6, still theory, and Vaishali here came up with the novelty bishop d4. An interesting move, I suppose. Theoretically speaking, no matter what white plays here, the position is going to remain more or less in balance. Bishop d3 is by far the most known and the most logical move in the position, but bishop d4 is definitely a cute way to continue the game. I need to highlight one main point behind the move bishop d4, and that is that neither of these pawns can now advance without considering material losses, because c5 bishop takes obviously means that the bishop can't retake without dropping the pawn. How big of a drama that is up for the debate, excuse me. Whereas d5 also, of course, drops the exact same pawn, and again, one could argue that the opening up the position with the two bishops coming to the fore may compensate for that. So, yeah, that's just to note there. Now, Salimova responded with bishop d7. I found this to be rather pale / too shy / too passive, call it whichever. I would have preferred to see bishop e6, especially because of the bishop on d4 now means that we can't jump to d4 to feast on the e6 bishop, and it does occasionally float the idea of taking the a2 pawn. It's not actually entirely out of the question. In fact, the next two moves, I think, determined very much the rest of the game and the path it followed, because Salimova played bishop d7, once again quite passive for my liking. h4, a stock standard move in this position, and I'm going to reflect on that in a second, and then rook e8. Now, these two moves, in my book, seem to accomplish extremely little. This is what I call semi-developing moves, because they don't really develop pieces, they just move them. But they don't exactly contribute to any plans or any meaningful events or actions on the board. And so it's just like, yeah, ticking boxes without actually contributing to the position too much. And I think these two moves set up what was going to come, and boy, we are in for a treat. Now, as for h4, I can't help but retell here one of my favorite stories about this particular move in this particular line. About a decade ago, maybe more, maybe less, I don't know, but about that, I read an article in a New Chess magazine written by Peter Swidler, and that name is particularly important in this story, by the way, where he defeated someone in this variation playing h4, and his comment about his own move h4 was that, I don't know what this move does, but at least it keeps me busy for the next 3 moves. And I found it particularly amusing that a high 2700 GM would, you know, say something like, well, I don't exactly know what it does, but it's gonna keep us busy for the next 3 moves. That is definitely hilarious. Now, why it's important that it was Swidler who said this? Well, Swidler is the second of Vaishali's brother, Pragg. So I don't necessarily exclude or rule out the possibility that Svidler may have helped Vaishali a little bit too in her prep, and perhaps this whole kingside attack was cooked up by Team Svidler. I don't know. I didn't watch any of the post-game interviews, so very often I tend to stab with these guesses in the dark, but I enjoy doing that, so why not coconut? Anyway, knight g5 is another way to justify h4, setting up this hook. The knight is very annoying on g5, bishop d3, bishop c4, both potential candidates for next. And of course, whilst black may very well play h6, he kicking the knight, it's not really gonna kick it, is it? Because the very idea of h4 was that we are gonna leave it on prey and we carry on with the attack with bishop d3. Now, the interesting thing about this move is that it may not be best. Bishop c4 seems to be a very, very interesting alternative. And here I found a couple of absolutely sensational lines, and I would like to show you those. hg5, most logical, loses on the spot. hg5, knight e4, and g6. In for a penny, in for a pound. Of course, if your queen is hanging, the best thing and the first thing you should do is to not consider moving it, but instead carry on with the attack. Now, capturing the queen is an instant mate in 2, so that's not doable. And of course, after bishop g5 comes a marvelous sequence. Takes f7, takes e8 check. Bishop e8, this is the only recapture that denies the check, allowing white to regain material immediately, but nonetheless the check comes, and here is the awkward alignment of the two heavies on the black side. So although now we are inevitably losing our queen, we are going to regain it here, and that concludes this variation with a beautiful win for white. Of course, after bishop e3, if bishop takes, we take back with the queen, and once again, if the queen is captured, we are going to take a bishop, then a queen, then everything else on the way. Actually, after king d7, we can even avoid knight takes c4 check by giving an extra check and then taking the queen so that we can take the knight as well. A sensational variation. Now, of course, it's not quite as clear as I would like to make it look, because after knight g5, instead of the horrid capture, black has d5. And here too, I have a few fascinating lines for you. Oh, by the way, no, there was something else here. No, it's coming here. So bishop c4, d5, bishop takes f6, and d takes c4. If bishop takes f6, then queen d5, and we are mopping up on f7. Very, very nice line there too. And if hg here, then again queen takes d5 is a marvelous double threat. If d takes c4, so once again, bishop c4, d5, bishop takes f6, and if dc, then we are not even going to take on d7. No, we still go for queen d5 first, and after hg5, we take back with hg, and this is just so much fun. Check this out. In this position, black's only move is bishop takes f6, right? Check out what happens if gf, rook h8 check. It never rains, it pours. And if king takes, then queen takes f7, and after having sacrificed 2.5 chess set full of pieces, the checkmate on h1 is only avoidable by bishop h3, but then comes the last dagger, g6, and queen h7 mate is simply inevitable. Absolutely fantastic stuff. Rook 2 bishops down, and here comes the checkmate. Equally beautiful is, by the way, king g7 here, where we come in with rook h7 check. Now if they take, then queen f7 is an even easier mate because it checks, it goes with checks all the way. Whereas king g6, queen f7, king f5 allows us to put our application in for the beauty prize with the sensational quiet move rook d4, cutting the black king off on the full frank. And now basically the checkmate threat associated with the idea of g4 followed by queen d5 or queen h5 is unstoppable. So let's just execute one of them That mate is fantastic. So this is all coming from the attacking idea of bishop c4 instead of bishop d3. Now I will show you what black's best would look like. So d5, bishop f6, dc, queen d5, and instead of take takes, and instead of take on f6 with a pawn, it's bishop takes. That avoids the immediate defeat. And here white's best is takes, and still not taking d7, but going for a cheeky mate threat and preparing for rook takes. Black throws in the check to send the king away. Queen h6, takes, and tada! The dust has settled. We are in a double rook or 4 rook endgame. The material is level, but the position is still playable because the rook on d7 is extremely active. And after rook a8, pawn a4, dealing with the back rank mate, now we are also threatening to take this pawn. Black still has a fair bit of work ahead of her to prove that this position is indeed a draw. So that would have been the story if Vaishali had gone with bishop c4. Instead she went bishop d3, also a fine move. Knight g4 only, good defense on Salimova's side. And now, ladies and gents, here comes the firework. Or fireworks rather. Knight takes f7, king takes f7, bishop check, king f8, and queen d3. Now this is a super nasty position to defend. Black is down a piece, the king is utterly exposed, and the threat of queen h7, queen g8 seems to be borderline impossible to hold. The light square diagonals are really juicy for white in these variations. It's actually a sight to behold. Even queen g6 can be very dirty to deal with. And so Salimova here opted for bishop g5, but it turns out that this move was born out of panic. I don't know what she miscalculated here, but the logical course of events would look like bishop f6, queen h7, and then bishop e6, blockading the diagonal, forcing white to take and then go after the two loose pieces, creating a marvelous double attack. However, here black has a surprising resource. Knight takes f2, throwing the knight away, or rather sacking the knight rather than just simply accepting that it will be captured. Now queen e6 will be met by knight h1, and then there are too many trades going on and white doesn't have anything left. The position is more than likely in balance. And likewise, after queen takes f2, queen e7, followed by ducking the pin, is likely going to lead to equality. Obviously, anyone would prefer this with white, but the advantage is so tiny. Objectively speaking, black should wiggle out from this and achieve a draw. I really don't know which part of this Salimova missed. And once again, holding a position like this is a nightmare. So I definitely am sympathetic toward her for, you know, playing this and not finding necessarily the best way to defend. But on the other hand, other than this, in particular playing for bishop e6, nothing offers any hope whatsoever for black. She went for bishop g5, and here the cheeky Vaishali goes like, yeah, nah, not interested in taking your piece, thank you very much. I still want to go for the mate in there. And likewise here, to be perfectly fair, this is a mistake because of bishop f6. And again, we repeat the exact same line. So both of them must have missed something here. I don't know what that was. What I do know is that I have a line for you here that you can marvel at, which is the correct hg, queen g, king b1. And here it looks like knight f6 holds the fort. And I have a fantastic move here for you to once again admire how beautiful chess is. So just for the record, bishop e6, by the way, here is not playable because of queen f3 check. And then various issues occur. Most notably, simply, I'm going to mow down the queen side. So take, queen b7. And black is lost on the king side in the center and on the queen side. Several pawns up, white will be after f3 and then picking off the remaining pawns, and all of a sudden it's just merely a totally winning position. So this is not on. Knight f6 is only. And here it may look like black is holding. If we play the hasty f4, looks brilliant, because after queen f4, rook f1, it looks like, or even queen g6 and rook f1, you name it, even bishop takes f6, and I can't retake because of rook f1. It just looks like black is dead lost. But they have queen f5 here, a very annoying tempo scored on the white queen, and this kind of throws a spanner in the works, because I don't want to trade queens. And if I dodge the queen trade, then all of a sudden the black pieces come alive, and the attack is long gone, and now it's actually black who is taking advantage of the soft, light squares. So instead of f4, in order to prevent queen f5, white has hit a fantastic g4. What a move! The pawn technically is capturable by 3, but in reality by none. And the very idea is simply to prepare f4 next, when capturing either pawn will open up the respective file for white for a deadly attack. Let's have a look one by one what's going on here. If we go bishop g4, then rook d g1, I'm not going to analyze this any further. This is the epitome of what a very healthy attack versus a scattered black army looks like. Bishop takes f6, f3, all are threatened, and yeah, black is just completely busted here. There is no way out, and yeah, that is just game over, and that's actually the best capture on g4. If queen takes, then probably bishop f6 first, followed by rook g1, or even take queen h7. I would play rook g1. The attack is breaking through here with elementary power. Queen g6 or queen h7 next, and it's just gonna be mate. So that's completely out of the question. And the knight takes g4 reintroduces, or allows us rather, to reintroduce our main plan with queen h7. And now after bishop e6, if I can just take and eat the rock, that's good enough. And if black doesn't take at all, let's say we play something like bishop c6, then comes f4. And now we have achieved what we wanted, which was that black will have to take one of these pawns, and then we are going to obtain one of those files with a vicious attack. So that could have been on. Instead, we went king b1, and again, Salimova here missed her only chance to play bishop f6 to hold the fort. And after knight e5, for all intents and purposes, the game is over, since the recapture loses the d7 bishop as well. So she dropped back to f6 now, and then Vaishali just went in for the kill with bishop takes d6. A beautiful finish, by the way, and kudos to the Indian for finding this tactic in a very pressure situation, both because she's bouncing back from a loss, but also she has only 9 minutes left on the clock, so finding this is quite cool. The idea, of course, is that after cd, queen takes d6 check, we are attacking the d7 bishop, and if the rook goes to e7, then we pull back to d5, once again utilizing the mate threat and the fact that now the rook is tied down to the defense of the d7 bishop. If rook e6, then I can take the bishop, or a truly sadistic move would be to take b7, attacking rook, attacking bishop, attacking bishop. That is just too much. So in this position, Salimova opted to play queen d7, but now she's about 19 pawns down. The position is beyond repair, and Vaishali ended up converting with ease. I will just play through the rest, but really it is just yeah, a finger exercise for a player of Vaishali's strength. A really entertaining game, awesome kingside attack, good stuff. This was the type of chess that I expected from Vaishali, and I look forward to seeing her and of course the rest of the field to play in similar spirit. And with that, we are going to check out now the brother, and that is not going to be any other than Praggnanandhaa against his countryman Vidit. So I don't even know what to say about this game. I'm completely blown away by the way how Praggnanandhaa plays in this tournament. It just almost doesn't make sense. Like, he just threw in the kitchen sink yesterday against Gukesh, sacrificing pawn after pawn after pawn, then a piece, then an exchange, and then some. And even then he had chances to walk away with a draw, but unfortunately for him, Gukesh found a few nice defensive measures, and in the end he came up too short. 99.9% of, top players in similar conditions and in similar scenarios after a loss coming at the next game with black, they would try their absolute best to make a draw, bounce back with a draw, and look for the next white game. And then what does Praggnanandhaa do? He just casually throws in the deferred Schliemann, right? Like, of all things. And absolute chaos ensues in, like, move 6. And this is just unbelievable. And in my book, this is, like, nerves of steel and some. Like, to play like this for in a situation when you are -1 and you are literally playing with fire with black in the very next round, I mean, this is just unbelievable. And I can't praise the young Indian for this enough, because this is a mentality that is completely alien, in my opinion, to pretty much any other player in this field. Like, anyone would have been super happy to make a draw, especially against Vidit, who just is on the back of a victory with black against Nakamura, and, offering him a supposedly easy win with white would give him wings. And instead, here we are, Praggnanandhaa going like, show me what you got, buddy. I just still can't figure out how they came to, this idea of playing this deferred Yenish, other than the fact I have done a little bit of digging, and I found that there were 2 Indian grandmasters, and now I forgot who they were other than Ganguly, but there was another Indian GM, I will try to remember, who played this recently with black. So there might have been, some Indian training camp a year or 2 ago where they analyzed these lines. Because, it can't be a coincidence that 3 Indian GMs would give this a go with black. And also note that Tari Aryan played this against Duda. That is the most known game, by the way, in the books. And all of those games followed pretty much the same path with some minor move order details, which was that they castled, and after c5, knight f5, c4, rook e1, a super sharp position occurred. And for the time being, the engines seem to think that this is holdable for black, or white, depending on how you look at this. The idea being that after c takes b3, we have got this knight d6 check concept incoming, and also a takes b attacks the knight. And so black's defense is stretched quite thin, because I need to keep an eye on the knight, as well as my king not getting mated. But the smart idea for black here is that for this very reason, we do not take the bishop. We simply play queen b6 immediately, and after knight d6, bishop d6, e d6, king f8, it is now white to prove that they have enough. And quite frankly, whilst the black king is very, very exposed, we can't help but notice that it's very difficult to attack with back rank fest. And in fact, as I said, Ganguly actually went on to win. Duda defeated Aritarian here. I think the game went with knight c... no, actually it was knight d2, I believe. Either case, chaotic complications, absolute nightmarish scenarios occur here, where the better prepared person is definitely going to, have a huge psychological edge. Now, on top of everything I said, Vidit almost certainly could not have anticipated that this was coming, right? So that definitely throws the spanner in the works for white, and he actually shied away from the complications by taking f5 instead of opting for the more thematic lines that I just showed you with castles. Now, after knight takes f5, there are still crazy scenarios ahead, but what Pragg did here was just absolute god tier chess. So to play d6, and then after takes d6 or after queen e2, either way, to play queen d7? Hello? I mean, that is just absolutely god tier chess. And again, I cannot help but admire Praggnanandhaa and his team, by the way, for playing such exciting, non-compromising, sharp, come for me or I will come for you type of chess. This is just crazy. And after ed6 check, which is, by the way, a mistake, the casual king f7 already puts black slightly ahead. The dual threat of queen takes f5 and rook e8 means that white is probably best advised to play knight e3 here. But after bishop takes d6, castles, and knight f6, the beautifully developed black army easily compensates for the pawn deficit and the uncastled king. But the uncastled king is merely a statistical detail here, because rook f8, king g8 is going to resolve that problem without any dramas whatsoever. And the dynamic black pieces will definitely cause a lot of trouble. In fact, in many ways, I would think that Vidit would have felt some level of deja vu here, because this position looks a lot like his victory against Hikaru from the previous round, where the American couldn't develop the queenside for the entirety of the game. So, in order to avoid this, Vidit opts for e6, which also looks super scary at first sight, but we already know, at least those of you who watch my YouTube channel on a regular basis, that scary is not a chess evaluation, at least not an objective one. And yeah, after queen c6, now g2 becomes a very tender point. And although bishop g5 also seems to turn on the heat, the youngster casually brushes it off with g6. It's just like, wow. So now, again, e7 is just casually met by g takes f. And when you take f8, I take you back. And rook e8 is coming to exploit the king-queen pileup, and know that castles is not advisable on account of a sudden checkmate. Black is clearly better. Wow. So, after g6, knight e3 is more or less forced. At least it allows white to castle safely. h6, bishop f4, knight e7, and black is already ahead. Absolutely unbelievable stuff. So as far as the opening prep is concerned, it looks to me that black took on an immense risk by playing the deferred Yenisho Schliemann, and pretty much straight out of the opening, we are landing in a position where black is clearly better. And the reason for this, partly I blame knight f5, which basically was an admission on Vidit's side that, yeah, I'm not up for this theoretical battle, but I still want to play a position where I potentially can have the upper hand, but boy, that upper hand just slipped away very, very quickly. And from here on out, we have got what I think Praggnanandhaa is really best at, or the area of chess where he excels the most, which is just utter chaos. And whoever calculates better is going to come out on top. And actually, that statement is going to be contradicted by what went down in the game a little bit, but let me not get ahead of myself. So, c4, at least trying to eke out some extra space and secure a potential knight d5 jump. I do like this move a lot, and the engines approve of it too. Queen g4, very logical, trying to secure the pawn and create some discovered attacks potentially if black opts to castle queenside, which according to the engine they should have done. But queen c5 makes a lot of sense. It opens up the bishop's diagonal. It allows black to operate on the 5th rank with a little bit more freedom, so makes perfect sense. Bishop g7 completing development, knight d2, and interestingly enough, the game he continued with castles, which is a mistake. Looks like the most logical move on the board, but in fact best he would have been kingside castles, quite surprisingly, introducing the rook immediately in the action. And after something like knight f3, rook f6, it's easy to see that not only are we doubling rooks on the f with quite a bit of gusto and oomph, but also the e6 pawn is becoming a fair bit loose and motherless, and is likely to become the next victim of the super active black pieces. This move would have brought, in my opinion, quite a bit of clarity to the position instead of the utter chaos that queenside castles invited. Now this is a very practical choice, because once again, now the imbalances in the position are absolutely endless. Like, this is the definition of chaos in chess. Opposite castled kings, the bishop pair against non-bishop pair, a pass pawn on e6 very deeply in the black position, which may turn out to be a weakness or a brutal strength. Like, it's just all kinds of imbalances. There's nothing that, you know, you could count as a like for like in this position. And of course, such script is perfectly suiting the side who has got more than double the time of his opponent, which at the moment is Praggnanandhaa. And sure enough, immediately Vidit airs, and by the way, does so by only spending a minute and a bit on the clock. Understandable that he wants to avoid falling further behind, and he plays a move that appears to be a very prophylactic measure. It stops g5, it extends the bishop's diagonal in case of a g5 h5 push, and so on. So it seems to tick a lot of boxes. But by playing this move, Vidit actually misses the only time in this game when he could have jumped onto d5 and actually cause a lot of drama along the diagonal and on the blockading e7 square. The long story short is that, again, this line is nothing short of, you know, super engine-y, extremely deep stuff, but we need to look at it because this is the right move, and it's super exciting too. Check this out. Knight d5, e7 check, rook d7, c takes d, and basically the story here is that Black finds it very, very difficult to somehow defend the rook on d7. By the way, instead of cd, the even better move, and this is what I wanted to show you, and this is why Vidit didn't play this, because this is so counterintuitive. So knight d5 takes, check, and instead of the automatic recapture, even I fell into the trap, knight e4. Wowzers. And the idea here is that after the logical looking queen d4, we have got this absolutely insane sack, knight takes d6 check, cd, c takes d, apparently creating like a non-threat, but really rook c1 check followed by queen takes d7 is almost entirely unstoppable here. It's just absolutely crazy that black has nothing to do against either the check or the subsequent queen takes d7, in the sense that I can't shield the check and I also cannot defend the rook. It's just one of those weird moments when seemingly well deployed pieces still coordinate poorly because of the e7 pawn, and the extremely awkward pin just weighs in too heavily. Queen d5 is perhaps the best defensive attempt. Wow, English is hard, because now it creates a counter threat. So after check king b8, I cannot take the rook because of the mate. But rook fd1 seems very logical here. The engine brushes it off with queen f5 when white might not have enough, and in fact instead recommends queen takes g6, introducing queen g7 as well as e8 queen, and of course rook takes d6 loses to bishop d6 check. Now again, the depth of this stuff is almost, it's bordering the impossible for any human to calculate all of this and pull the trigger on a move like this when you needed to see all of the above before, like in this position, before you commit to knight d5. You had to see the check, you had to see knight e4, you had to see knight takes d6, and you even had to see that in this position we shift out from the plan of queen d7 and we start going after other loose pieces. I mean, to find this, like, you deserve to be the world champ, or at least the winner of the candidates. if you have all this worked out when you have got 22 minutes on your clock. And so no wonder that Vidit opted for a seemingly tame h4 that seemed to have kept the position, you know, under some level of control, but all of his chances are now gone. And after rook e8, and I think there were a few other moves too, even bishop takes b2 was a possibility, but rook d8 is just very calm and measured. Black strengthens the defense in terms of the blockade and starts going after the e6 pawn. And yeah, for the remainder of the game, white has very little chance. Knight d5 cd. There is one more time just about to come now where Vidit could have had a fighting chance. Bishop d5, e7 check, king b8, and after bishop e3, according to the machine, Praggnanandhaa chose the wrong move by playing queen b5. An extremely logical and human choice though, because it keeps the pawn protected. The engine likes queen c6, allowing white to take this pawn with a tempo, only to come back with queen b5 for the queen trade. This again just makes no sense for a human to even consider anything like this. And now obviously the queen trade is terrible for white, because in the resulting endgame e7 drops two bishops. Absolutely chaotic position. No, not chaotic. Actually, that's a terrible position for white. And after queen g4 back, now we take on e7. This just doesn't make sense to do this ringa rosy. Instead, Praggnanandhaa opted for the extremely logical and pragmatic queen b5, keeping everything on the board safely secured. But now after knight c4, correct move, bishop c3, bishop d4, and rook g8, here there was a glimmer of hope for Vidit to fight back with, again, an absolutely outlandish idea, which was to take c3, played by the way, and then play knight a3. Now, again, just me speaking that idea, I feel like I am committing some level of blasphemy against the chess gods. But it turns out that knight a3 just wins a vital tempo for white to set up this absolutely crazy city rook b4 threat. And it turns out that white just has enough momentum here to fight back and really create serious chances for a draw. Rook d3. Now this is on, and more importantly, when I take e7, this queen g3 move is what creates really serious chances for white here. Now all of a sudden there is a lot of loose items on the d file. And for example, after rook d8, rook d1, bishop e4, rook takes d6 looks quite tempting, but the casual rook c3 introducing rook d6 as well as rook c5 would have given white enough counterplay here for the material deficit, which is now merely a pawn. But yeah, this is again a type of idea that I don't think would come naturally to most super GMs even. Queen d4 made a lot more sense, I suppose, attacking d5 and c3, but this allowed Pragg to keep everything under control without allowing any initiative to white. Yes, Vidit managed to recapture the pawn on c3, but that is no solace. There is nothing fun in the resulting position. Black is a healthy pawn up, and now the position is quite quiet, I suppose is the word. Like, the dust has settled. Bishop is superior to knight. There is no attack on the king, and as long as black consolidates, which he did with remarkable ease, the resulting endgame is definitely very, very promising. Here probably is the last mistake. b4 instead, he should have immediately captured, and then again played for some kind of counterplay on the queen side. But yeah, overall, after this, Praggnanandhaa just mopped up with remarkable ease. He started creating kingside attacks, and as a result of that, white had to trade pretty much everything, and the resulting endgame was just 2 pawns down on the queen side is not tenable. And yeah, Pragg just converted with ease. Even here playing very precise chess. Rook e5, the mantra is when there are 4 rooks on the board and you are up material, you need to trade a pair of rooks, and that's exactly what he accomplishes with the check. Now comes another check and then go after the remaining pawn. A super easy win. I rushed through this end phase, but I didn't really feel like Vidit had a lot of legroom here to play any other moves than the ones that were played. And yeah, Praggnanandhaa just converted once again with beautiful technique. G2 was on, so he had to offer the queen trade, and the rest was a mop-up. Insane, absolutely insane opening choice and approach to the game. I cannot praise enough the young Indian and his team. And by the way, again, I need to go back to the team. Praggnanandhaa arrived to this tournament with Swidler being his second. And although Swidler is known to be a quite dynamic, aggressive, if you will, type of player, but he's also known first and foremost as a classicist. And for someone who is a classical chess player with classical chess education and chess values to entertain the idea of going for the differed Schliemann, that is, yeah, just next level. So, yeah, I think that this was fundamentally a victory before the game even started, because they managed to come up with a variation that caught Vidit off guard. He avoided the most topical debate here by taking on f5 instead of accepting the challenge with castles. And after a few more moves, he was already on the back foot for the rest of the game, and he just couldn't handle the pressure that resulted in this very awkward position, combined with the time deficit. I mean, hello, look at it, 137 versus 42 in a slightly inferior position already with white. That's not what you want to play. So, in summary, a super cool win by Praggnanandhaa, and I think that this victory is going to restore his self-confidence, if he ever lost any, by the way, because this game demonstrated that he's definitely not shying away even after a defeat. And I'm super excited to see what he's going to bring to the table for the rest of the tournament, because his chess seems to be, to me, the most fun to watch, and I really look forward to exactly doing that, watching Pragg and of course the rest of the field. But don't forget the beautiful victory by the sister either. So the ladies tournament is sharpening up too. Yeah, excited to see what round 4 is going to bring. I'm going to see you there. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to chuck a comment down below and click that like button please as well, and I will see you in the next round. Bye.